Good morning. Welcome to Date Like a French Woman, the podcast to help you open to the love that you really want in your life and activate the law of repulsion for all those Mr. Wrongs out there. Today, I have the pleasure to interview Mindie Kniss, the creator of Cor Coaching Academy, a coach training school. Her diverse background ranges from working in the wilderness as an adventure trip guide to corporate America at a Fortune 100 company. In 2006, Mindie was awarded the Global Health Fellowship in Nairobi, Kenya, based on her work with women and children in developing countries. She holds an MFA in creative writing and completed her dissertation on heart intelligence. Mindie hosts an annual HeartPath retreat in Sedona, Arizona, and has spoken all over the world on many stages. I personally was introduced to Mindie through the Abundance Factor movie, and I am delighted to have her on our show today because I love the way she uses heart intelligence in her coaching, and I believe she's the perfect person to teach us about the art of staying flexible to the universe plan because of her relationship with her husband, Sean Stevenson, aka the Renaissance Man. Welcome, Mindie. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
I saw you in the movie The Abundance Factor, and I would love first to start, if you're willing to, with your story, because I know that your story wasn't always easy. Now you're on movies and everything, but you went through quite a few challenges. So if you would like to take us on your journey.
Sure. I would love to. So when I was working in corporate America, as you mentioned, I knew that there was something greater that I was supposed to be doing. You know, I felt like I was pretty good at my job and truly really didn't have any complaints because the people were great, the pay was great, everything was good, but it wasn't fulfilling. So it didn't have that soul feeding capacity that I was really looking for. So when I was in Kenya in 2006, I decided, you know what, this is not what I need to be doing for the rest of my life. And being so far away from home, it gave me the opportunity to step back and really look at my life with a different perspective. So when I came back in 2007, I decided I was going to leave corporate America and become a coach. And why coaching? It was because that's really who I am. I've always been the person that people have come up to, and even people I don't know, they've said, can I tell you something, or can I share something with you? Or they just have trusted me, and I've always done that. So I just thought that's a great, perfect fit into who I already am and the way that I already am. So I'm going to pursue that. So in 2008, I left corporate America, and I was just going out with all enthusiasm, total passion, guns blazing, ready to take over the world. And I thought that, you know what, I feel like I'm a pretty good coach, so this should work out great. Well, what I didn't realize is, even though I had worked in a big company, I really didn't know how a big company runs, or even any company, even a small company. And so what happened was, over the course of the next 2 years, everything went downhill pretty quickly because I no longer had an income, a paycheck that I could rely on regularly. I very quickly went through all of my savings. I very quickly went through all of my credit cards. And back in 2008, people were giving out a lot of credit. So I had a lot of credit to my name and spent it all. And, a lot of people these days say, well, what did you spend it on? Were you just going crazy buying everything? And I'm like, no, it really wasn't. What it ended up being was I was paying for my rent on credit, and I was paying my food on credit, and all just the necessities. So where that led me to over 2 years was my home that I owned in Michigan was foreclosed. And then I was evicted from the apartment that I was living in Portland, Oregon. And I thankfully had also rented a small office. So I ended up moving into that office space because that's the only place that I had to go. And I tried to get rid of everything that I could in terms of my personal possessions. If I could sell it, I did. or if I just gave it away because I didn't have the space to keep it anymore, I did. And so I had my car, which thankfully was paid off at the time. Otherwise that probably would have gone too. My office space that I was then living in, and the few possessions that I had left were in the office with me. So, and then all of that turned into filing bankruptcy the following year. So it was not at all the, the glory story that I was hoping for. But what happens when you go through something like that and you live through something like that is that then you come out the other side a lot stronger. So one of the things that I love is being able to look at people eye to eye right now and say, look, if this is something that you want, if this is something that you're going for, if you have a dream that you can start a business, like you can, because I did it. And oh, by the way, let me help you make it not so traumatic as my story. I learned a lot of lessons along the way.
And do you remember what kept you going? Did you have a thought or a mantra that kept you going? Because a lot of people would have given up.
Yeah, well, honestly, I thought about it many times. So I definitely flirted with that idea of like, hey, I could just go get a job. I had the connections and the resources and the experience at that time that I could have gotten a really well-paying job at that time in that industry that I had left earlier. The real key was, I would say, twofold. One was internal. Yes. And that is just pure tenacity. Quite honestly, I don't know anything else because I didn't know what to do. And that is very, very, very frustrating, especially for somebody like me that often, I tend to have my stuff together. I can figure things out. And I just felt like, wow, this time I can't figure it out. So pure tenacity on the inside. And then externally, I had some really just amazing people in my life. Sean, my husband, being one of them, who was like, you're not quitting, like stop that nonsense of going back and getting a job. You're meant to do this. Everybody knows that you're a great coach. You know that you're a great coach. So basically stop whining and, figure it out. And that's eventually what I had to do. So I'm super grateful for those people that were like, nope, this is it. And also that internal drive that on the day I wasn't feeling it, somebody else externally said, look, this is who you are.
I think the internal tenacity that you had, it's because you were aligned with your purpose, probably. And that was feeding you from inside out. And the importance of having the people around us that support us is, I can't mention it enough, because that really can make you tip one side or the other in moments of doubt. So
true. And if I could actually just add on to what you said, is especially for women, because I know a lot of guys who are entrepreneurs and their spouses or their significant others at first are kind of like, oh, well, I'll just support you and, I'll kind of figure out what my purpose is later. And then seeing them over the years, they get really frustrated with that setup because they're not on their purpose. They're supporting someone else's dream. And while I think you should, it's great to support your partner, you absolutely have to be on your own. So you're right. That was the driving force.
And I see that also. So I'm coaching a lot of women on love and dating because of my personal experience of having been the queen of attracting the dysfunctional relationships everywhere I went, in friendship and even in business sometimes, because what you do in one area, you do all across the board. And when you know how to select the people in your life, because I guess that was a conscious choice for you to have those people around you, or was it just life bringing you who you needed?
Well, I would say, it was both. I think that life does bring you who you need. And sometimes that's even some of the negative experience because you need to grow through those experiences. So, not that that's fun to go through, but I think that life always does bring you. But it is absolutely a conscious choice because I had people in my life that, were friends of mine or previous people that I had dated even that were not playing at the level that I was playing at.
Yeah.
They, were much more on the victim side of the spectrum. And why is this happening to me all the time? And I'm like, look, you're creating this. It's all energetic. So what you're being, you're attracting, and then you're complaining about it because you're not seeing that, oh, by the way, that's me out there.
Yes.
That whole
you're the common denominator. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. So I would say it was a combination of both. Is the universe is much smarter than we are and much more wise, and can bring us the exact people and circumstances that we most need. And being very aware of the consciousness and the energy of the people that you surround yourself with. And I definitely changed a lot of that over the years.
Yes, because you can have the right person but not see it, because your reticular activating system is blocking it.
Yeah.
When did heart intelligence came into the picture for you?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, I don't have a really interesting answer. What it really came down to was I was doing my work for my PhD, and I had to pick a topic for my dissertation. And there was a few different things that I was really, really interested in. And one of them was I wanted to look at the commingling energy of money and sex, because that creative, creation-based energy, it's the same. And because I had struggled so much on the money side, I'm like, how can we utilize this, and how can we work for this? That was one topic. The other topic was, there's a lot of talk about this power of the heart now, and I've always been brain focused.
Yes.
I was the kid in school who knew all the answers. I always aced the tests. Like, I was a brain-based person. And I thought, okay, if there's another source of intelligence here, I think I might like to know more about that. So as boring as this sounds, it honestly just came down to me having to pick a topic and then picking heart intelligence. What that opened up, though, was truly the basis of everything I do now, because it's fascinating.
It is. Did you find that personally, because you were so cerebral, and I am like that too, I analyze everything, I used to. And you have to practice some kind of letting go and trust, because you're going to go from here instead of here. Did you go through that yourself?
Oh, yeah. And it's very scary. I would say that when we get, and this is true for any of us, when we get outside of our comfort zone, it feels terrible. Our first reaction is to say, screw that. I don't want to do that anymore. Let me go back to what I know, even if what I know is kind of miserable.
Yes.
It feels like, oh, at least I understand this. At least I'm, this seems like normal for me. And so, yeah, it is uncomfortable. It can be a little bit scary, but the more you practice, the more it becomes a habit. And then the more it just becomes who you are and the way that you process and the way that you are. So that now, and I'll be honest too, a lot of people say, oh, Mindy, you've figured out all this heart stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm still figuring it out. Not something
still human.
That I have not achieved this heart intelligence thing that I'm talking about, but it's definitely still a practice, but it feels really good now. And I know that I can trust it way more than my brain, which to me is saying a lot, because I've always relied on that intelligence. And then to say, oh, there's this greater intelligence, which even if I can't analyze it, or even if I can't figure out all the logic of it, I'm going to trust that. And it always works out.
Because it's the unknown. And it's, for me too, it still is very scary sometimes. I need to know that A plus B equals C. Well, no.
Yeah, the other thing though is I like to live my life as an adventure. You said in the bio that my background was leading adventure trips.
Yes.
I've always been very interested in let's have an adventure. Let's make this life exciting. So within that, fear has to go with that, because otherwise it wouldn't be very exciting. It'd be like every day.
Yes.
So I'm kind of all for let's get into the scary parts and let's face the fears, because that's where it's really fun.
Yes. And so now to go toward how you met your husband, because I think I've heard you say that you were not at all planning to go back. You're in Chicago, right?
I was in Portland.
You were.
So I'm from Chicago originally, which is where Sean is from. And you're right, I was not intending to one, ever move back there, two, ever move for a man. Like that was not on my plan at all. And then three, ever get married. I wasn't thinking, I was so career. I was like, I have my business and that's what I want to do. And I'm, living out my purpose. Well, then the universe knocked on my door and said, oh, by the way, your purpose includes this other guy. And I'm like, what?
And so how did you meet, first of all? Where did you meet?
Well, we met, and this is so funny. I still think it's hilarious to say this, but technically we met on Facebook because when I was in Portland, I had contributed to a book. This was back in 2008. So this book had just come out, and a friend of mine in Portland was helping me do some promotion stuff for the book. And he said, Mindy, there's a bunch of people on Facebook that you probably should know. I'm going to introduce you to them. And actually, this person did not know Sean personally. He just knew of his work. And so my friend Francisco sent me maybe 5 or 6 people. And he said, look, there's a lot of synergy with what they're doing and what you're up to. So, if it turns into anything, great. So I just said, whatever. Okay, click, click, click. Yay, we're all friends. I didn't think anything of it. And then probably 6 months after that, I happened to be in Chicago visiting because my family lives there. So I was visiting family and I ended up going to a seminar. The speaker on stage was talking about Sean. He was using Sean as an example because for those of you that don't know Sean, he is 3 feet tall and he's in a wheelchair based on a bone condition that he has. And this guy on stage was saying, no matter what, like you could have all the excuses in the world, but look at this guy. He's still on stage with the Dalai Lama and working with the president and all these big things. Like basically, what's your excuse? So I heard that and I thought, I think I'm Facebook friends with the guy that he's talking about. I should look him up. So that evening I went home and looked on Facebook and I thought, okay, this guy, Sean, he and I are about the same age. We're both from Chicago. So I sent him a message and said, hey, this guy's giving you a shout out. That was kind of cool. And oh, by the way, my friend connected us about 6 months ago because of this book. So I said, I visit Chicago occasionally. If you ever want to grab coffee, that would be fun. I was thinking business. Sean was not thinking business. And so he responds and he says, well, I would never say no to coffee and a cute girl. And I was like, that's not what I meant. Like I was not in that mindset. I was not thinking that at all. And I said, yeah, okay, maybe I'll just let you know when I get back into town. So fast forward 6 months later, this is the end of 2009 for the holidays. And I was visiting Chicago again to see my family for Christmas. And for whatever reason, and this is where the universe probably stepped in and was like, Mindy, remember that guy that you said that you would contact? So who knows why I did again, but I reached out and I said, hey, do you still want to have that coffee? And that's where it all started. We met in Chicago and soon after the next year, I ended up moving back to Chicago, which like I said, I thought I would never do. And the year after that, we got engaged and I'm trying to think, moved to Arizona together and then have been married since 2012.
So in my experience with my clients, I have a lot of women that are so set on the criteria, the physical criteria that they want in a guy, that they're literally blocking love from coming to them because they wouldn't see it if it was that close to them. How are you able to bypass the fact that your husband has a bone condition and everything that goes with it? Did it cross your mind? Did you have to, work on your mindset, or you just easygoing and you just saw the inside and all the richness of him?
Yeah, again, I would say it was both. I would say that my tendency is to look more internally than externally. That being said, I think that you can find things that are attractive in almost anybody.
Yes.
They may not be somebody on a magazine cover, a model, but there's going to be things that you personally find attractive. And honestly, you can't let what anybody else thinks,
yes.
about that. I remember a friend of mine that I had in Portland, Sean and I were on Skype so she could see him and his face and everything. And I just remember her saying something like, oh, like he has such an underbite or something like that. And I was like, who cares? Like, I didn't care. But to her, that was like, you know, she might not have chosen somebody that had an underbite. I'm like, whatever. So what it came down to was, what are your priorities? To me, I would much rather be with somebody who is funny, and Sean is funny. He's totally ridiculous is what he is. So I laugh constantly. I also really wanted somebody who was aware spiritually and mature. I think actually because of his condition, he had a sense of maturity that a lot of guys that were my age didn't. In the past, I had dated older men because I found that I almost had to get that level of maturity that I was looking for. But, you know, when you grow up with a physical disability, you have to really handle a lot of stuff in life and have a really different perspective. And so, you know, he's very positive. He's also, though, and I think this is important for women, he's also very open to growth. You know, if I'm recommending something or saying, hey, babe, you know, you could probably do this a little differently, he's really open to suggestion, which I find appealing in a man.
And it's rare.
I don't know. It depends on, you know, the perspective and what you're willing to accept. So for me, when people say that, oh, you know, did you just look past his disability? I say, no, that's impossible because it impacts everything. You know, it impacts everything. Like, he can't get into a car by himself. So when we drive, I take him out of his wheelchair, I put him in the car, and then I put his wheelchair in the back. So, I mean, just little things like that, they're going to be different, but it's what are you willing to compromise on? Because I don't need somebody that can get in a car, but I definitely need somebody that can communicate well, that can have really deep, awesome conversations. I really love that he makes me laugh so much. So those are my priorities.
And it's a question of compatibility, I guess, because you're probably very compatible on a lot of things. So, but that's something that I think a lot of women need to understand, that stop focusing on the outside aspects and go deeper, because that can make you 10 times or 100 times happier than you ever thought you would be, because I'm sure you didn't have this picture in mind growing up or at any point in your life.
No, I mean, nobody sets out thinking I'd like to date a little guy in a wheelchair. But you know, quite honestly, with all the different lists and things of, you know, me saying this is what I want in a guy, the two categories that I'd recommend for your following is to be really, really, really clear about what's a deal breaker.
Yes.
But then what's a would be nice. So for instance, on my list, I thought it would be nice if the guy had an accent, you know, if he was European or some, you know, just something interesting, because I like the adventure of that. And then I get Sean, who's as white as you can get from Chicago. Like, that's, you know, but that wasn't a deal breaker for me.
Yes.
What was a deal breaker for me is I would not date a guy who smoked, because that, to me, just that level of non-health is just not compatible. So get clear about what's the deal breaker and what would be nice, because then you can see if, you know, if they've got a couple things that would be nice, great.
Yeah, I always tell them the would be nice, and even the flaws that you're ready to live with, because everybody has flaws. And that way, even some that maybe complement yours. I don't know, because we have some too.
Or that you could grow together, you know. Well, you could figure it out together. And, you know, to add on to that, there's two other categories. So there's usually four things I tell people. It's deal breakers, would be nice. How do you want to be treated? Because I think
that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, even in your own story, you can look at the ways that you were treated and that's, this is not what I want. So how do you want to be treated?
Yeah.
And the fourth is, who do you need to become to attract that type of person.
Exactly, because things fit together. If you meet dysfunctional people, you are also fitting in the picture. There is something dysfunctional in you too. So until you change that and you no longer fit, you will keep attracting those people. And the wanting to be treated in a certain way, we teach people how to treat us. As long as we have somebody who's available for love and really ready to commit, but we teach people how to treat us, which brings me to another question. I believe that we meet the people in our life that can also help us heal on a spiritual level, and it's not random. And even when things go well, there is an opportunity for healing on both sides. Did you ever ask yourself what Sean has helped you heal, or vice versa? Did it cross your mind? Or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% in agreement with you. Is the universe brings us people in order to heal, you know, and
Yes.
Nothing I don't think is random. It's all very much
orchestrated,
planned, divine. And yeah, I would say the biggest, and I can speak from both sides of the spectrum. For me, I had some, and you know, I'll say sexual trauma, but I want to be clear about what that is. I wasn't raped, or I wasn't, you know, there was nothing like that. But growing up in the Christian church, there was a lot of heaviness around sexuality.
Yeah.
And, you know, and also me, I always grew up and I was always short for my age. So when everybody else, you know, their bodies were developing and things like that, mine wasn't as much, and it took a lot longer. And so I had all this stuff around sex and sexuality. And Sean he actually did his clinical hypnosis degree, his doctorate. He was intending to write his dissertation on sexual attraction. So he read like over 200 books on sex and sexuality and sexual attraction and all of these things. And he's been a huge, huge help in that regard. Like that was a big piece of healing that I needed, sure. Even though I wouldn't have known, I was like, I'm fine. You know, I didn't like really traumatic stuff like other people do. So I just thought, I'm good, but I realized I wasn't good. So he helped in that. And I would say on the flip side, I am a total independent, very much about self-reliance type of person. And Sean came from a family that was very codependent and very, I would say, connected to a level that was unhealthy.
Yeah.
And that was exacerbated by his disability, because he needed them, you know, to do certain things. Whereas most of us may have left after high school and gone off to college or gone off to get a job. He didn't. He stayed at home until he was 31 years old. And there was a lot of unhealthy dynamics going on there. And I know that my attitude and my just knowing how important it is to establish your own independence in life really helped contribute. And actually just this year, he has broken away from, because he was in business with his family, you know, everything was intermingled. And he is just this year broken off from that and is now doing his own thing, which was hard and scary and crazy, and yet really, really powerful. So there's been awesome, you know, healing and growth for both of us.
That's a beautiful, beautiful story. My two favorite questions. Self-love is really a pillar of my coaching and in my life. But many people don't even know where to start with it or what it means to them. What is your own definition of self-love?
Yeah, that's so, and I'm so happy that you said that, because that's ultimately where it all comes from, comes back to, because you can't possibly think about, oh, I want to create love out there in my life if you don't have it here first.
Yes.
You know, you know that. So what I would say, my definition of self-love is an honoring of the greatest part of you, that like the self with a capital S. Mm-hmm. That may be your soul, you know, depending on what you believe, or just your higher self or whatever you want to call it. But it's it's a devotion to that and an honoring of that, so that you can, like I've learned to do, check in with that level of consciousness, which is way better than your normal mindset. And so it's a true honoring of that and a adoration in a way.
Wow.
Somebody once said to me, it was a friend of Sean's, that he was getting to know me, and he said, Mindy, I think that, and he said, I don't mean this in an arrogant way or anything like that, but I think that you are the most internally, what did he say? Internally, not focused. What, I'm trying to think of the word that he used. Like basically internally validated.
Okay.
So he's like, you're not looking for something out there to validate.
Yes.
You're doing that yourself, and then you can just show up and be who you are and, do a lot of great things. But I think that ties in with self-love, because it is an internal validation. It's an internal love. It's an internal devotion and adoration first. And then, oh, by the way, that shows up out there in the world.
And it's a point of power too, because you're no longer dependent of the outside world to feed you and fill you. You're already full.
Exactly.
And how do you practice self-love in your life concretely?
I would say self-care is a huge aspect of that. It's taking, if you love something, like a little cute dog or, a little baby, what do you do to show it love? You take great care of it.
Yes.
And I think that's what we need to do for ourselves as well. When we love ourselves, how do we show that? We take great care of ourselves. So staying fit, making sure that the body is getting the movement and the flexibility that it needs, eating foods that are nourishing to the body, spending time, whether you are an extrovert or an introvert, first of all, knowing who you are and what you need, that helps. And then making time in your schedule for those things that are going to recharge your batteries. For me, I'm a huge, huge introvert. So to me, it's all about making time in my schedule for solitude, for hiking out by myself in nature, for reading and reflection. All of those things are massively important. So it just comes down to really taking great care of you.
So that means you need to know yourself first before you
that
can
helps,
do that.
yes. Yes, definitely.
So your business now is about training coaches. Do you still coach yourself, or no longer coach yourself?
That's an awesome question. I do. The majority of my time is now focused on the academy. So that's for people who would like to become a coach. And the first question everybody says, well, what kind of coach, Mindy? What is it? And as far as I'm concerned, the stuff that I teach is the fundamentals of business, and also how to not coach from a script, but to coach from the heart. So that can be applied to relationship coaching, business coaching, life as a whole coaching, whatever kind of coach you want to be, whatever professional coach, you can get started there. I do still take private clients because that is my favorite piece of the whole thing. I will always do that because there's nothing like that.
The feeling of it. Yeah. Yes.
It's so great when you can just get in deep with a client and then watch transformation happen. Yes. There's nothing better. So I will always do that, even though it's a smaller portion of what I do now. What's cool about that for me is that on the professional scale, that allows me to be a little bit more choosy in terms of who I work directly with. So that's been really, really fun.
That's a treat.
It really is. It truly is.
If people want to find out about you, what's the best way? Do they go to your website?
Yeah, that's mindiekniss.com is where all my info is. And that pretty much anything I'm up to, you'll find there. So yeah, that's the best. Thank you for asking.
And I'll put it in the description too.
Cool.
Do you have one parting advice for the audience? Anything you would like them to take from today?
Sure. I would say get comfortable trusting yourself. You know, there are a lot, and I would say especially women, of course this applies to everybody, but especially women, you have to be able to trust yourself. If there's something, whether it's about somebody you're meeting in a relationship or romantic sense, or about business, or about your career, or I mean anything, trust your senses and rely on them. You know, begin to get comfortable relying on them, because truly it will never, ever, ever steer you wrong.
That's
and
true.
The more used to it you can get in terms of just recognizing, oh, you know, I have this hunch. I call it the nudge. Something when the universe is poking you, or maybe something punching you.
Yes.
Strong.
Or kick you to the ground.
Pay attention to those nudges and then act accordingly.
That's great. That's beautiful. I want to thank you for accepting this interview today. That was really fun and very enlightening. I never know. Sometimes I do Franglish. And for our audience, go check Mindie out. I'll put her website below, and start really connecting with your heart and your inner wisdom. Thank you, Mindie. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Please excuse the sound fluctuation. I experienced some internet connection problems, but I did not want to deprive you from this interview, which is packed with very powerful and practical information. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel. And for questions, information, or to book a free 30-minute introductory coaching session, please visit datelikeafrenchwoman.com.